What is going on, Headliner Nation? Hopefully everyone's doing well out there. Today we're talking about our quarterback and tight end rankings here for Week 9 fantasy football. And let me just tell you this to start off with. The quarterback rankings are disgusting. Here in Week 9, just listen to this. We have 4 of the top 14 overall quarterbacks on a bye week. We just lost Kirk Cousins. Matthew Stafford is hurt. Kenny Pickett is playing hurt. Desmond Ridder was just benched. 2 of our best quarterbacks in fantasy football had to fly to Germany to play in an international game. We're starting 2 rookie 5th-round quarterbacks. And oh yeah, on top of that, a top 12 fantasy quarterback was traded this week and will not play. I think it's safe to say at this point, these quarterback rankings may look a little bit different than anything we've seen so far this year, but if at the end of this video you find yourself wanting more, like flex rankings, defense rankings, kicker rankings, we have those too. They're just a member perk, so consider hitting that little blue join button here right underneath the video. Become a member. You'll get the added rankings. You'll get bonus content. You're gonna get members only live streams, access to Discord, and so much more. It's a lot of fun. Our members absolutely enjoy it, but let's not waste any more time. Let's go ahead and dive into the quarterback rankings first here. Number 1 this week, it's Josh Allen. And this doesn't really surprise anyone, right? I mean, Josh Allen is out there putting up fantasy points left and right because his defense is allowing more points than really what we're used to in Buffalo. In a matchup going up against Cincinnati and Joe Burrow, I got Josh Allen number 1. Number 2, it's Patrick Mahomes. I know I don't love the international games, but it's such a great matchup for him going up against Miami, especially if Miami can put some points on the board and force Patrick Mahomes to have to continue to throw. That's why he's at number 2. Number 3, it's Lamar Jackson. He is playing ridiculously good football right now. What we really need from Lamar Jackson is for him to have a matchup against a good run defense, right? Because they're running so successfully lately, he hasn't had to throw the ball. Well, this is the perfect opportunity because Seattle definitely easier to throw on than they are to run on. I got Lamar Jackson number 3. Number 4, it's Jalen Hurts. Not the easiest of matchups for him going up against Dallas, but with the way this connection is right now between Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown, how can we not have Jalen Hurts up inside the top 5 here once again? Number 5, it's Tua Tagovailoa in that game in Germany against the Kansas City Chiefs. Something just tells me that Tyreek Hill is going to try to go off in front of an international crowd against his former team, and that paired with the current hot streak that Jalen Waddle is on, I got Tua at number 5. Number 6, it's Joe Burrow in that matchup going up against Buffalo. He's finally healthy. He's throwing touchdowns, and we love to see it. He's back inside the top 10 at number 6. Number 7 is Justin Herbert, and he continues to have that crazy tape job on his broken finger. But now he's got a matchup going up against the Jets, which is not an easy one. But luckily for him, his number 1 receiving threat is Keenan Allen. He plays in the slot and won't have to worry about Sauce Gardner, so I got Herbert at 7. 8, Dak Prescott playing really well here the last couple weeks. He basically went into LA the past 2 weeks and says he owns that town. Now he gets a matchup going up against Philadelphia. And we all know that Philadelphia allows points in bunches in the passing game, so Dak Prescott at number 8. Number 9 then, it's Derek Carr, the highest we've had him in a while. Obviously, you're starting to see we don't have a whole lot of options this week, but he's got a good matchup going up against Chicago, and Carr over the last 2 weeks has found a lot more success in the deep passing game. Is it going to be Olave? Is it going to be Shaheed? Either way, Derek Carr inside the top 10 at number 9. Number 10, Sam Howell. This dude has to basically throw each and every week until his arm falls off because his defense is that bad. Now the Washington defense is even worse than it has been in weeks past because they just traded away their top 2 pass rushers in Montez Sweat and Chase Young. This may not be an easy matchup for Sam Howell, but he's going to be throwing the ball a lot. Number 11 is CJ Stroud. He's got a matchup going up against Tampa Bay. It's a lot easier to throw on Tampa Bay than it is to run on Tampa Bay, and they can't run the ball anyway in Houston because that offensive line is just torched. They're going to throw the ball a lot. I got CJ Stroud at 11. 12, it's Gardner Minshew. All the guy does is go out there, throw for huge yardage, and turn the ball over, basically. But now he's got a matchup going up against Carolina. But do matchups really matter? Because this guy continues to go out there and find success in difficult matchups each and every week. So I got Gardner Minshew at number 12. 13, it's Jordan Love in a matchup going up against the Rams. Not the easiest of matchups, but we just saw Dak Prescott absolutely annihilate this defense last week. The biggest issue here with Jordan Love is his own offense, though. They can't seem to find anything that works and can't get momentum anywhere. They need to put some serious focus on getting Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs going on a weekly basis. That's why I got Jordan Love at 13. 14 is Baker Mayfield. Didn't have a bad week last week against Buffalo. Now he gets the Houston Texans here this week. Houston has been one of the best run defenses in the NFL over the last month of the season, and Tampa Bay can't run on anyone. This is a perfect mixture for Baker to have to throw the ball down the field to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, so he's at 14. 15, it's Will Levis, and I'm sure everybody thinks that Will Levis is the second coming of like Josh Allen at this point, but let's slow our roll just a little bit. We can't expect DeAndre Hopkins to have 3 huge touchdowns every single week, and I don't know if this passing game has enough weapons to give him that constant high ceiling. I still don't mind the floor, though. In a decent matchup going up against Pittsburgh, I got him at 15. 16, this is where I got Geno Smith, a super difficult matchup for him to travel to Baltimore and face that Ravens defense. Geno been playing a little bit better here as of late, but really needs to start protecting the ball better. But he's got one of the best trios of wide receivers to throw to each week with DK, Lockett, and JSN, and then we can't forget about Jake Bobo either, so Geno Smith is at 16. 17, Daniel Jones, and honestly, I really don't love this. He's going to be traveling to Las Vegas, a Las Vegas team that's probably going to come out with a lot of emotion here after the firing of head coach Josh McDaniels. I don't know if you've seen the press conferences or not yet from new interim head coach Antonio Pierce, but when this dude speaks, even I want to run through a brick wall. Daniel Jones just now coming off of an injury and having to worry about Max Crosby. That's why I've dropped him all the way down to 17. 18, Mac Jones. And honestly, this is a great matchup. They don't get much better than this for an opposing quarterback, but Mac Jones really doesn't have a whole lot of weapons at his disposal. He lost his wide receiver 1 in Kendrick Bourne to a torn ACL. Devontae Parker's in concussion protocol, and despite the matchup being as great as it is, I just don't know if he has enough weapons to give him a super high ceiling, but this is probably the highest I've ranked Mac Jones in quite some time. 19, it's Bryce Young, Carolina Panthers, in a matchup going up against Indianapolis. Not a bad matchup whatsoever. My biggest concern with Bryce Young is he's getting hit way too much. It's like he can't react fast enough to the pass rush. Maybe he can't see it coming. I know a lot of people probably won't agree with what I just said, but the guy is definitely having trouble. Not only just seeing over his offensive linemen, going through his progressions, and then having to worry about his blind side every single time because the offensive line can't hold anyone back. He is getting better week after week, but we just haven't seen a consistent ceiling, so he's at 19. 20, this is where I have Aiden O'Connell of the Las Vegas Raiders in a matchup going up against the New York Giants. Now, like I mentioned earlier, I expect a lot of emotion there in Las Vegas, and Aiden O'Connell is a big-armed quarterback that can definitely take advantage of having weapons like Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers a lot more than Jimmy G was. Jimmy G looked horrendous last week. I got Aiden O'Connell here at 20. 21, it's Zach Wilson. A great matchup for Zach Wilson going up against the Los Angeles Chargers, a team that can't stop anyone in the secondary. I expect a whole lot of Garrett Wilson this week, but after that, it's going to have to be a big play from Breece Hall or something to raise the ceiling for Zach Wilson. That's why he's still down at 21. 22, it's Taylor Give Me a Heineke, now the starting quarterback in Atlanta going up against the Minnesota Vikings. On paper, it's a great matchup, but Minnesota's defense has been playing a lot better here as of late. But really, the reason he's still sitting here at 22 is I don't trust a damn thing that Arthur Smith does. He is arguably one of the worst head coaches in football now that Josh McDaniels has been fired. 23, it's Kenny Pickett. This one has to do with an injury. When you have a quarterback with a rib injury playing on a short week against a pass rush like the Tennessee Titans, I'm a little bit worried that Kenny Pickett may not even make it the entire game. That worries me because his ceiling has already been low, so I got him at 23, and then 24 is Matthew Stafford. At the time of this recording, he has not been ruled out. They have come out and said that, hey, he's not going to go on the IR, but they are also trying to shore up other quarterback options. There's not a whole lot else out there as of right now, though, so I put Matthew Stafford at 24 just as a little bit of a reminder. So yeah, as you can see, the quarterback rankings a little bit different than they usually are, but the rankings are not done yet today. We still got to talk about tight ends, so let's throw it over to Kyle.
What up, headliners? Trying to find a tight end this weekend is not going to be any fun. We are missing 3 top 8 tight ends. We have a few other guys who are currently banged up, and we don't have the best matchups in the world this week. So for my rankings, it's really about trying to find safety, because if you're out there trying to scramble to find a tight end for your lineup, you just want points. You're not looking for a ton of upside this week. You literally just don't want to take a 0. So I'm going to be going through my rankings this week of the top 18 tight ends. I got a couple of guys just sitting on the outside looking in for specific reasons, and we're going to try and get you set up with somebody that can help get you just a few fantasy points to hopefully help cover the spot and still get you to a victory this week. Let's hop into it Number one, we already know. Travis Kelce going up against Miami, of course, will be number one overall, and it's not a bad matchup for him this week either. Miami does allow the 9th most fantasy points to the tight end position, and of course, this has all the makings of a potential shootout. Mark Andrews going up against Seattle, they do allow the 10th fewest fantasy points to the tight end position, and one thing I talked about in the start and sit video about Mark Andrews is he's seen his ceiling come down a little bit in terms of his yards, because he's not getting as many big plays as he once was in this offense, but he's still getting a ton of targets and he's scoring touchdowns right now, averaging about 56 yards on 4 catches per game, but those 6 touchdowns boosting him up to over 13 fantasy points per game, one of the best ones you can find out there right now. TJ Hockenson is going to be interesting this week with a rookie quarterback at the helm. Really, for me, when I talk about TJ Hockenson, I'm saying he lost a lot of his ceiling this week because of the fact that I don't know if Minnesota is going to be able to drive for touchdowns against Atlanta's defense. Will he see enough targets? Yes, but for him to really reach his upside of being an actual top 3 tight end, I would say that he's going to have about 10 targets this week. Now, is that foreseeable? Absolutely, it could happen. But again, I'm doing these rankings based on safety, and the reason I have him so high is because when you take a look at all the tight ends combined, he is one of the guys that is really utilized within his game plan and will likely be looked at regardless of whoever the quarterback is. Dallas Goedert is seeing a nice jump in his production over the last few weeks, and it has nothing to do with targets because he's been getting approximately the same targets all season long. It just has to do with his big plays, because at one point he was averaging barely 5 yards a catch, and now he's well over 10. The big plays are back for Dallas Goedert. I definitely think it has something to do with the big streak that we're seeing A.J. Brown on right now. Of course, Devontae Smith on the other side, but it just feels like Jalen Hurts is looking his way a little bit more often than what he once was. Cincinnati allows the 2nd most fantasy points in the game right now to tight ends, and Dalton Kincaid for Buffalo is looking like a great option this week. The tight end 7 each of the last 2 weeks. He found the end zone finally last week, but his rise in production since Dawson Knox hurt his wrist has definitely put him on the upswing towards top 5 potential. Jake Ferguson going up against Philadelphia at number 6. I don't mind Jake Ferguson this week. Definitely has some touchdown potential. I really just wish the Dallas Cowboys would get him more targets. He was averaging almost 7 targets per game through a 3-game stretch earlier in the season, and we've seen that dwindle. And after coming out of the bye, I really thought they would get back to it, and they did not. Philadelphia does have a little bit of a tough time stopping the pass. Right now, their defense ranked 26th in the NFL against the pass. Hopefully that means some upside for Jake Ferguson this week. Right now, the Jets allow the 8th most fantasy points to the tight end position, and Gerald Everett has saw a big increase in his usage since Mike Williams went down. And we know Josh Palmer has been banged up a little bit as well, but as of right now, Gerald Everett is not on the injury report. Keep an eye on that. If for some reason he moves to questionable before Monday Night Football, we may have to take a look at a different option. But Gerald Everett, for me, honestly, I think is one of the safest bets in all of football this week at the tight end position because of his usage since the Mike Williams injury. Taysom Hill, I've got at number 8 going up against Chicago, because if you're looking for upside at the tight end position this week, there really isn't a whole lot of guys I would look at instead of Taysom Hill. If we're based solely on upside alone, I would say Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, and Dalton Kincaid are the only 3 that I would have over Taysom Hill. But in terms of safety, I've got to bump him down because he's not getting targets and receptions anymore. We just got to hope that Taysom Hill carries the ball anywhere from 8 to 10 times this week and possibly scores a touchdown. The only reason I have him listed at number 8 in terms of safest tight end options is because we know he's going to get some sort of touches this week. We just don't know how many, we just don't know where, and we don't know what it will produce. Kyle Pitts at number 9, and with Taylor Heineke taking over, he might give the Atlanta offense a little bit more upside. But the reason I've got Kyle Pitts safer than Jonnu Smith this week is because when you take a look back at Taylor Heineke and what he has done with his target share over the course of being a starter in Washington, he really doesn't target tight ends that often. But Kyle Pitts doesn't typically play the tight end position. He plays out in the slot, and Jonnu Smith plays the tight end position. So if I had to pick one of these guys this week, it probably would be Kyle Pitts over Smith. At number 10, I've got David Njoku, and honestly, he could end up going higher than this, but we'll have to wait to hear a little bit more about the quarterback situation. Because in my start and sit show, I talked about the fact that it is clear that David Njoku is targeted more when Deshaun Watson isn't the quarterback. And at the beginning of the week, it was looking doubtful that he would be able to play. And then he returned to practice, and then it was wondering if he could or couldn't play. And then all of a sudden today, he's talking about, well, we're going to see if I can play or not. So right now, I don't know if Deshaun Watson is going to give it a go. If we find out that Deshaun Watson is out, David Njoku would go up to tight end 8 for me. And in fact, it is possible that he could also go all the way up to tight end 6 as well, given his usage over the last couple of weeks. But for right now, if we were to find out that Deshaun Watson is going to be his quarterback, I'd probably end up having him a couple of spots lower than this. Logan Thomas at number 11, he gets a decent amount of targets, not a whole lot of big playability, but when you take a look at what he does for Washington, it's hit or miss because he's either getting 1 or 2 targets in a week or he's getting 7 or 8 targets in a week. And going up against New England, the hope is this week he's getting you 7 or 8 targets because we're going to need it. Jonnu Smith at number 12, I already kind of mentioned Jonnu Smith when I talked about Kyle Pitts and why I have Pitts safer than Smith this week. But in terms of his usage, Jonnu Smith plays on the field a little bit more than what Kyle Pitts does. And one of the reasons why I have him at number 12 over some of these other guys behind him. At number 13, Trey McBride, 14 targets last week, the most targets a tight end has had in a game this season. But now he's got a new quarterback, rookie Clayton Tune, going up against the best defense in football. I just don't trust it this week. Cole Kmet at number 14. Are we going to see 10 targets like we did last week? Or are we going to see 0 targets the way we did a couple of weeks ago? New Orleans is a super tough defense. And if we're going to be getting the ball out quickly, Cole Kmet is going to have to be the guy that they look at. I just don't trust this Bears offense. At number 15, Dalton Schultz. Coming out of the bye, I was hoping he would keep up his streak of 3 straight games with touchdowns. And then he comes out and puts up a big fat nothing burger the other day. 2 targets, 1 catch, 5 yards last week. Not nearly enough to be fantasy viable. And it is that reason right there that I have him a lot lower because while I love the 3 touchdowns in a row, he didn't do anything to start the season. And coming out of the bye when Tank Dell was healthy, he completely disappeared as well. It'll be interesting to see what happens this week against Tampa. Cade Otton makes it into my top 18 tight ends based solely on the fact that he plays more snaps than any tight end in football right now. He plays over 90% of Tampa-based snaps. And because of that, he's going to be on the field a lot more often. And what do we want this week? We want tight ends that are going to be on the field. At number 17, Hunter Henry. I've got him back in the top 18 this week. Basically because Kendrick Bourne is done for the season. Now, there's a lot of different things that could happen in this game. We know that Washington lost their 2 top offensive linemen to trade this week. So how are they going to get after New England? Is Mac Jones going to have time to throw the ball? Probably. Does that work for Hunter Henry? Does Demario Douglas become the guy? Do they get the ground game going a little bit with Ramondre Stevenson? Does he see more targets? Does Zeke see some targets? The only reason I don't have Hunter Henry higher right now is just because we don't know what the offense will look like this week. At number 18, Luke Musgrave. Super risky option, but going up against the LA Rams, we're hoping for big plays. He's probably only going to get you 3 or 4 receptions, but hopefully one of those receptions go for more than 20 yards. All right, I've got a few guys just on the outside looking in, and leading that group is going to be Michael Mayer. New head coach, new offensive coordinator, new quarterback, GM is gone. So what does that mean for Michael Mayer? Absolutely no idea. And that's the fun part about it, right? We would love to start Michael Mayer because a couple of weeks ago, he doubled his season production on 1 drive. And since that drive, he's basically been non-existent. So does he get back into the game plan this week? Will be very interesting to see. Chigiooko going up against Pittsburgh on Thursday Night Football. I really wanted to like Chigiooko this week. Last week with Will Levis, he did see his most targets in a game so far this season, but he really still hasn't produced, and Pittsburgh allows the 5th fewest fantasy points to the tight end position. So if you're looking to play Chigiooko this week, I definitely could see him having a decent game, but I could also see him having a stinker as well. Tyler Higbee is coming off 7 targets last week, but it doesn't look like Matthew Stafford will be his quarterback this week. So what does that mean for him in this offense? For me, a whole lot of question marks, and the guys ahead of him just have a better opportunity in my opinion. All right, if there's one guy that you're looking towards this week that you're hoping can make an impact for you, let's look at Daniel Bellinger. Now, I'm not interested in actually risking him with inside the top 18. But if you're looking for an option because you don't have anybody else, or you had Darren Waller and people have picked the waiver wire clean, Daniel Bellinger is a really risky potential start for me for those of you in deeper leagues. Keep an eye on him with no Darren Waller over the next few weeks. Daniel Bellinger is a guy that definitely could see some red zone looks. Last season, he started to look like a guy that could have fantasy relevancy this year. But when they brought in Darren Waller, that absolutely disappeared. Keep an eye on Daniel Bellinger this week. And then Donald Parham at number 23, just going to bring him up real quick because you know what? If something happens to Gerald Everett and he doesn't play this week, Donald Parham is going to jump kind of right into that 14 spot for me. He's going to have a lot of touchdown upside, but he's just not going to have a ton of safety. There you go, Headliner Nation. Hopefully my tight end rankings are going to help you get your lineup set this week. It is going to be a tough one, make no doubt about that. But hopefully there's a few guys in these rankings that if you're just looking for a roll of the dice, or if you need an emergency plan, you're able to grab them up and they're able to give you a few fantasy points. But do me a favor, hit that like button on the way out of here and turn on the bell notification. So anytime we go live or we drop a new episode, you're going to know about it right away. But for now, Headliner Nation, peace out, stay safe and stay healthy. And I'll catch you all on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.